when we first became involved in private finance, it was very much about acquisition. So it was about acquiring new completed product. And that was as much about the lenders not wanting to include construction risk. So they had no familiarity with Clúid. There wasn't a history or tradition of housing associations accessing private funding, so that acquisitions of completed product was the safest activity from their point of view. As time has gone on, the options available to us have broadened, and we can now get funding for construction and so on. So there was going to be inevitably a time where we would have to prove ourselves in being able to handle and deal with private finance and have that long-term perspective. And as the lenders have been more comfortable and more confident with our ability to do that, they've extended greater credit to us as well. All our lending, in fact, is almost exclusively through the Housing Finance Agency, who have been hugely important partners to us. There is a desire, certainly on the part of government, to see truly off-balance sheet coming in and funding the sector. And the SPV, which is being developed with a number of housing associations and facilitated by the ICSH, could be potentially an important component of that, with a number of housing associations coming together, bringing our scale together so that we can become attractive to large institutional funders and institutional investors. It could be a huge game changer, and that would be truly off balance sheet. What we've seen in Europe and in other jurisdictions is that where private finance has come into the sector, it's involved huge transfers of finance into social housing. So it's enabled housing associations throughout Europe to fund huge programs of social and affordable housing, and that's really where we want to get to. I think organisations themselves, the housing associations, must, trust each other. It's an area which, we've tended to be, I wouldn't quite call it competitors, but we've tended to be organisations who've operated separately. And I think there's a degree of trust which takes time to build up. And as well, I think there comes a maturity in the sector over a period of time. The more people become familiar with private finance through the Housing Finance Agency and other local lenders such as the high street banks and so on, they become therefore much more aware of what's needed to access the larger institutional investment. But it is a different proposition, much more risky and so on, so that organisations, as I mentioned earlier, that step change that occurred between grant funding and private finance, I think another step change is now required between debt finance on a scheme by scheme basis to one where we're accessing large amounts of funding to fund whole programs, and that's institutional investment. And that will require trust, because no one housing association can do it on their own. It's the combination of our development and building programs together which give us the scale which is attractive then to institutional investors. The reality is that no government is ever going to fund on balance sheet where there's an off balance sheet vehicle available. So not only will they opt automatically for housing associations because there will be a truly off balance sheet vehicle, but also the amounts of money that can be funded will be exponentially increased as a result. It's a win for the people on the housing list, and it's certainly a win for housing associations as well. It's more long-term, it's more secure, it's more sustainable, but it comes with the disciplines which are necessary. It comes with different structures within organisations, and potentially as well probably different structures within the housing association movement. So I think you'll probably see more consolidation in terms of, because there is a scale which you need to access that kind of funding, and that is something which needs to happen a little bit more in terms of organisations collaborating much more closely together. And we're all fiercely autonomous in our own way, and it's about ceding some of that autonomy for the greater good and being able to fulfil all our social missions, because at the end of the day it's not about Clúid or it's not about individual organisations, it's about housing people off the waiting list and fulfilling our social mission.